What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another episode of The Lawyer You Know, and we are jumping into the Diddy trial, giving an update because opening statements are supposed to start Monday. Jury selection has flown by. We're going to talk about why, because there's a lot of interesting things that have already happened in this case with the lawyers, potential witnesses, jury selection, Diddy himself, that are going to give us a good indication about how this case is just going to be different because it's in federal court versus a lot of the criminal state court cases that we have followed here on YouTube. And I'm going to answer a lot of the questions that have been coming in on social media from all of you. So let's get to it. So a lot of this is coming from reports from people inside the courtroom, from people discussing the case, leaking out information, basically what we already know from certain websites and what's come from their lawyers and statements that have been made. But a lot of the reporting from the courtroom is exactly what you would expect in a federal criminal trial, and it is limited. Now, opening statements are coming Monday, so we're going to get a lot more information when people are reporting exactly what the government, what their theory is, who these witnesses are, what they're trying to prove Diddy did. We may hear some of his defenses, some of the weaknesses in the government's case from the defense's opening statements, and the lawyers are getting prepared to start this case. And Diddy is not the first lawyer to try to build the legal dream team. We know he's got Garagos. We know he's got Agnifilo. We know that he has Brian Steele added to the team. And there have been reports that one of his lawyers that he's either added or was already on the team may have been a victim of abuse themselves. And is he going to try to use that some way in opening statements, which would be inappropriate because a lawyer's not allowed to testify about their background and how it may affect the case or garner some sympathy from the jury or some understanding that they're a real victim and the victims that they're going to be cross-examining are not. So you have to be careful, but that's what the reports are. And celebrities and criminal defendants alike try to build the team that is best, sometimes to just cross-examine one witness, sometimes, as we've seen in Karen Reed's case, potentially to just help with jury selection. Some lawyers have specific skills or expertise in a certain portion of a trial. So celebrities and other defendants that are able to afford it will add them to the team. And it seems like Diddy is doing just that. We've also heard right before the trial started, Diddy rejected a plea deal. That is not surprising at all. The government in federal cases is famous for offering bad deals right before trial because usually they're incredibly confident. And that is coming to fruition when you see the percentage of cases that is in the high 90s that they convict. Very rarely do you get a not guilty verdict in a federal case, especially one this high profile, this big, that they had to be sure before they even went forward. But even with the fact that I'm calling it a bad offer, many times the bad offer prior to trial ends up being better than what happens if they convict the criminal defendant, which often happens. Like I said, if you look at the percentages. So it's still an offer, usually for less jail time than they will be looking for after the case if they get the conviction. But many times it's not worth the risk for the criminal defendant because they say, well, at least if I have a small percentage chance of winning and going home, or of course, if they're maintaining their innocence, it's not uncommon for that plea deal to be rejected before, especially a very speedy federal trial. We have been doing jury selection over the last week, and it's been reported that 600-ish jurors have come through. Now, they've whittled it down already. I believe today is Friday, so it's about around 45 jurors. And they think they're going to be able to pick the 12 out of that 45 today. Just to give you an example of normal cases like I try, we usually get somewhere between 35 and 45 jurors, and we're able to whittle it down in one day. Now, we have had federal court cases that I've tried where we have individually questioned jurors, which is what they did in this case. And sometimes that can take a lot longer, but they were able to do it in about a week. And you may ask, how is that possible comparing it to Karen Reed's case, which took twice as long as that? And Diddy, I don't care how big the Karen Reed case feels, Diddy is more well-known than Karen Reed. Everybody knows who Diddy is. But as we've learned, just knowing who Diddy is not enough to get you struck in this case. Do you have a bias for Diddy or against Diddy? Is that bias something that is going to affect the way you look at this case? And apparently there was a lot of that in jury selection, as you would expect. And as you can imagine, based on the reporting, based on the allegations and just how bad it is, and based on the fact that people have for decades maybe loved or hated P. Diddy. There was a lot of questions, as you can imagine, about, assault and harassment and victimization and dealing with law enforcement. But in federal court, it's not surprising to me that the jury selection is going quicker. It almost always does, in my experience. The judge controls the jury selection so much more generally when you're comparing federal court to state court. Many times the questions have to be approved by the court. The court will ask way more questions, in my experience, than a lot of state court judges. Sometimes you have to submit the questions you want to ask. Sometimes they'll limit the amount of time or the question areas and contents lawyers can go into if they let the lawyers ask questions at all. Additionally, there's a lot of social media today's day and age, and they've had issues with certain jurors saying, no, I haven't been following it on social media, or I didn't make any posts. And the lawyers have gone back and done research and come and said, this lawyer liked a tweet or retweeted a meme or made a comment on something. And the jurors are like, oh, maybe I did when I was doom scrolling and things like that, which is definitely going to be an issue, not just for jury selection, but for them sitting as a juror on this case for the entirety of the case. And they're going to whittle it down to 12 jurors, I believe, plus alternates. We don't know exactly what the alternates should be. I think it should be 6 alternates, like Karen Reed's case. It's going to be a longer case. It's going to be a lot of outside pressure and influence and social media and reporting. The chances of losing jurors, to me, are higher than your average case. So I think they should and will pick a large number of alternates. Additionally, we have some high-profile jurors. Garagos and her father, who is not working on the case, high profile. Brian Steele, high profile. Some of his prior clients, high profile. Agnifilo, some of their current clients, high profile. So just from the lawyers, it's high profile. P. Diddy himself, P. Diddy's family. And you know, when they mention and they read the list of names, do you know these people? And if you do, let's talk about it. But there are also a number of celebrities that have been listed. Some we know their role, like Cassie Ventura. Some we don't necessarily, like Michael B. Jordan, Michelle Williams, Michael Myers, some high-profile producers, some people that have filed civil lawsuits against P. Diddy that are higher profile. So with all these celebrity names, it opens up the questioning even more, which would make you think it would take longer and longer and longer. Generally speaking, if a trial is a week or two, which most of mine are, it takes a day or two to pick a jury. So in a case like this, that's high profile, going to take quite a long time. I don't know exactly what the plan is, but we'll find out as the trial goes. 1 week seems pretty quick, but that's federal court. And that's with a dream team of lawyers fighting to make sure Diddy's rights are protected. They're not going to let the judge rush them. They're not going to let the judge shut them up. They're going to push. They're going to protect the record. But federal court judges are appointed for life. They're not scared to make a tough call. They're not scared to ruffle the feathers of a high-profile lawyer. There's nobody that's going to vote them out. It has to be something incredibly egregious for a federal court judge to lose their position on the bench. So that's important. Another thing, Diddy's lawyers, you can call it a win. It's not surprising. It happens in most cases. Diddy will be wearing civilian clothing. He will not be wearing the orange jumpsuit. He will be, and I believe he's been in a sweater and a collared shirt, maybe a tie some days, looking professional, not over the top, not anything that's going to distract or look pompous to the jury. I don't think. I think, that's the advice I would give as his counsel. I think he's going to look professional. I think he's going to blend in. And I think that it's going to be something that's not really surprising to any of the eyes of people that have watched other trials where criminal defendants are afforded that same privilege. Now, when you start talking about the evidence and how it's going to be presented, there has been reports that one of the victims may not be testifying. They might have lost track of, I believe it's victim number 3. And what can they do? Well, they can force him to come to court. They can go put him in handcuffs, subpoena him, bring him in there. Usually you don't like doing that with victims. I believe this is one of the victims that doesn't want their name and likeness out there. They want the privacy as much as they can. I think there are multiple victims in this case that have been afforded that right. So usually you don't want to do that. So what does the government do when this happens? Usually in a RICO or conspiracy case where there are a lot of moving parts, a lot of victims, a lot of different criminal activities, it's okay. You can do it without one victim as long as it's not potentially the star victim and witness like Cassie Ventura seems to be in this case. But again, I think there's a lot we don't know. I think there's a lot we're going to learn, which I'll talk about in a second about what's coming this week. But the government is going to have to adapt and adjust if this victim cannot be found or cannot or will not testify. I expect what I would do is probably not mention them in opening statements. Try the case, get as much of the information as you can without them. And if you end up finding them and calling them, great. If not, hopefully they're not a necessary witness for you. If they are, and there are certain elements you can't prove with that witness, are they going to try to alter the charges, alter some of the criminal activities under some of the underlying facts? Are those going to have to change? Are they going to have to sub in witnesses? Is that going to be a problem? Is it proper notice? Have they been subpoenaed? Will the defense file objections? And make a big deal about that, as they should, if any of the rights are violated, if anything is done in an untimely manner by the government. Is this victim? I'm sure there are going to be reports. Did Diddy get to them? Did he pay him off? Did something happen? Will there be witness intimidation charges? I don't know. That's going down the road of things we don't know, facts we don't know, speculating on things that's not going to help for the analysis of what's going to happen in this trial. But for all intents and purposes, everybody seems to think they are going to pick a jury today on Friday and start opening statements and potentially a witness or two on Monday. So we're going to start fast and furious. And it seems like this federal court judge, which some federal court judges, they like to take a lot of breaks. It's 10 to 4 with a break in the morning, a break in the afternoon, a break for lunch, and we don't come on Fridays. We've tried cases like that. Some federal court judges are like, we're going to do as much as we can. We're going to get this over with as quick as we can. So we're going to get an idea. What is the schedule going to be like? Is this going to be a fast-paced, fast-moving trial or a slower pace, which is going to allow the lawyers to do more work after 4 o'clock on Fridays, over the weekends, which depends on the case, but sometimes I do prefer that and I do like that. In other cases, I like to pack it. I mean, if it's a week, I want to get it done in a week. I don't want it to bleed over into the next week. If it's a 2-month trial, I'd rather it be a little slower pace. So again, you can keep up with the other work in your office. You can prepare. You're not rushed. You're not missing things as a very high-profile trial is going on and a very long trial is going on. But we are expected opening statements, multiple witnesses potentially on Monday, and this case is going to be off to the races. Now, you guys tell me who you're following, who you trust in the courtroom, because I'm going to have to get it from different sources. I'm going to have to try to follow this case. It's not going to be a daily update. Maybe we'll do some kind of weekly update on the Diddy trial if you guys are interested. Let me know if you are by asking a question in the comment section, by hitting the like button on this video, and for making sure that you subscribe to our page, hit that reminder bell for any Diddy videos that we do. Because we have had quite a few questions come in on social media. So I want to tell you my thoughts on so much of this. Is the answer is going to be it's federal court. That's why it's moving faster. That's why we have less information. That's why things are tighter. Federal court. And that's also why there's a lot more people in the courtroom than maybe if this was a state court case. Maybe it would be either way. But if you're not getting it streamed and you're not getting all the reports that are normal in a state case, you want to be in the courtroom if you're fully invested in this case, which a lot of you are. So let me know if you want my input, what you're following, where you're getting your information, and we'll do our best to give the people what they want, as we say. But thank you for joining me. Thanks for hanging with me. It's incredibly interesting, incredibly high profile. Maybe O.J. Simpson is the last one, maybe Johnny Depp, but it wasn't a criminal case, of course, Johnny Depp, that you can even compare to just how big P. Diddy is. That's all we got. Till next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.